It's a story that often goes untold, a story of hopelessness and loss. Now, suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in the U.S.
It is happening right here more often than you might think. WSBT-22's Kelly Stopczynski's been looking into this very tough topic. Kelly, generally, we do not report on suicides.
Jennifer, here at WSBT, we follow international guidelines when it comes to reporting suicides. If it's a situation that put other people in danger, a strange circumstance with a need to keep the public informed, a public figure or celebrity, we generally report it. But because of the risk for copycat suicides, mental health experts have asked us not to, unless we're careful to make it a message about public health. And that is why a local family agreed to share their story.
The last thing I told my dad as I got in my car and stormed off is that I hated him. I never wanted to see him again.
Brandon Johnston's carried that guilt for the last 15 months.
It sticks.
The 19-year-old Mishawaka High School senior knows his father's suicide wasn't his fault, but the hard part's been coping with it.
My dad had a lot of faults in his life, but just because he killed himself or the things he did in his life does not mean he was a bad man. I love my father and I'd do anything in the world to get him back.
I am still very depressed.
Brandon's mom, Laura, says she lost her best friend of 32 years when her husband, James, killed himself. She says she knew he was depressed and needed help.
He did not have insurance, so it was a little bit harder for him to get help. And I think that there's just a crack in the system.
James Johnston was admitted to a local psychiatric hospital a few days before he died, and it wasn't his first time. Because of that, Laura says he knew exactly what to say, so they'd let him go home. James was 45 years old, a middle-aged man who did not have a full-time job, but instead worked odd jobs. The day he died, he became a statistic, one that's all too familiar for suicide experts.
What you find is actually that the middle-aged rates are actually the highest in the population right now by age groups.
We're talking about baby boomers. And John McIntosh, who studies suicide, says boomers have always had a higher risk of suicide, perhaps because their generation is so large. And middle-aged men are at a much higher risk than women. National and state statistics are only available through 2012, but clearly reflect that trend. And our local numbers show the same thing. You can see in St. Joseph County, the number of suicides rose in the last 5 years. And men between 45 and 64 generally account for up to 37% of suicides here.
I do think coping skills is an issue, and one of the things you have to keep in mind is that women throughout their lifetimes have been told it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to cry. It's okay to respond in different ways. But I think men still don't reach out and are told in sometimes less obvious ways that you should solve your own problems.
McIntosh says another more obvious factor is the economy.
The Dow has plunged 32% in the months. The world watched in shock as the bottom fell out at the New York Stock Exchange. Dow dropped 400, 500, then nearly 1,000 points.
After it tanked in 2008, the number of suicides in all age groups inched up.
Men in particular as what have been the largest income producers, is that what this will do for their retirement years that are not very far away now, and how that will impact their ability to either retire at all or to retire in the way that they had imagined.
Brandon and Laura say they think a number of factors ultimately pushed James over the edge. They are left with the daily struggle of coping with counseling and support groups.
It doesn't change, it doesn't get any better. You just eventually learn to accept it and move on.
But they hope sharing their story will encourage others who are struggling not to end their lives.
It may seem like an open way, an open door, but think of the harm you're going to cause to everybody else. Try to think that there's always love and peace in the world. You just have to look to try and find it.
If you or someone you know needs help, or you just want to talk to someone about how you're feeling, that help is out there. You can see that number right there at the bottom of your screen. That's a national lifeline. It's open 24 hours a day.
And we're going to keep that number up on the bottom of the screen for a little while. And if you or someone you know needs that number, it is 1-800-273-TALK. We also have it up right now on our website, WSBT.com.
That's right. And people on the other end of that line will put you in help and in touch with the closest crisis intervention line.
You know, you talk about the risks, the things that you need to look for, the signs for depression and even signs of suicide.
Right.
You often don't notice what those signs are. They're not easy to spot.
That's right, and that list is so long. Experts say the most obvious warning sign is talking about wanting to die or saying something like, I won't be here much longer. Other warning signs are if someone is looking for a way to end their life. They talk about feeling trapped or being in unbearable pain, increasing drug or alcohol use, or withdrawing or showing rage, and talking about seeking revenge. There is a much larger list on our website, WSBT.com, right now, as well as resources, links. So if you or someone you know needs help, we're going to try to help you get that.
All good, valuable resources, and thanks so much to the family who agreed to share their story, because this is all about awareness.
Very brave of them to do that.
Yeah, Kelly, thank you so much.